Welcome, everyone. This is the Starting Point's first attempt at a podcast, and it is part of our commitment to our educational series. The pandemic has changed the way we do business, and we're very excited about attempting this new way of communicating with our Starting Point family and beyond. And Gary Dock has graciously joined us today to talk about anger management. The whole point of the education series is to really address a number of topics about living the best life we can. So we're just going to have a conversation, and that is the goal. So let me start with one thing. Ellen Frida is in the background. She is making sure technically everything is good. So I welcome all of you and hope that you will enjoy our first podcast. So Gary, who is an expert in anger management, he is a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor with 20 years experience. He is here at the Starting Point. He is beginning a recovery support group next week. It will, of course, include anger management and other things, but he and a few colleagues are starting what he calls the Wishing Well community. And we'll talk about that more towards the end of this podcast. But right now, I want to welcome Gary. And Gary, what did I miss? The stuff I missed in your background.
Nothing. I'm a little more nervous now because you set the bar so high and made me an expert right off the bat. But I'll see what I can do to live up to that.
Good. Okay, so let's just jump in, Gary. I think we should. So tell me, what is the difference between healthy and unhealthy anger?
Okay. Well, there are a number of myths that I'm sure all of us are familiar with in terms of what anger is and what anger isn't. Simply, if you look at anger or anything that's impacting us, to keep it simple, what I like to do is just say, well, how is it impacting you when you're talking about whether or not it's healthy or unhealthy, problematic or non-problematic? And three simplest ways to do that for me would be, how is it impacting you socially, your family, folks you work with, strangers? How is it impacting you biologically? Are you experiencing any sorts of stressors because of it? And psychologically, emotionally, how is it impacting you? And if you are not really feeling that you're experiencing any discomforts in any of those areas, then you're probably not having an anger issue. But if you're noticing some emotional problems in relationships, problems with how you're dealing with the swing or there's the normal experience of emotions, then you're probably having an experience where your responses to triggers it's not a healthy one.
Okay. So then if we're in the middle of a pandemic, so
Yes.
Let's talk about where anger plays a role. Isolation, depression, does it all feed in because it's an emotion, or just tell us how it all ties together?
Well, the pandemic is an unusual experience for all of us. Most of us have never lived through anything that's created this level of stress and anxiety before. One of the things that I've noticed in my practice and the practice of others that I've had this conversation with is isolation is huge, and something very interesting about the isolation that we're experiencing now is that it's not just isolation in the sense that you are alone, but also the isolation in that you are limited to the number of people that you have routine contact with. So that isolation is not just like I said, you're isolated in the house now with your spouse, with your children, with other extended family members, with a roommate, at a level that's much more intense than it's ever been before. So it's one of the stranger things that I've seen is, or more interesting things that I've seen is, since the beginning of the year, more folks complaining about that time that they're having together because of the increased level of contact that they're having with folks. So the stressors, the anxieties, the depression, all of those things are intensified. Typically, in sessions, you're used to hearing folks complain and have issues because they don't see family members enough. They want to spend more time with their children. They want to spend more time with their spouse. These are the things that are causing problems. But it hasn't been unusual, particularly in the last few months, to have parents come in and complain about the amount of time that they're spending with their kids, the amount of times that they're spending with, a spouse or significant other. So there's certainly been an increase, not only in the anxiety and the stressors and the frustrations with that, but also in terms of anger, and how people are dealing and managing and coping, day to day with those experiences.
What are some of the coping skills that individuals can use, particularly in isolation?
You, it, and again, the pandemic is very has been a very unique experience. So with that, you have to be creative in the things that you're able to do. Normally, in what our normal existence was at one point, you could get away. You could, go to a park, go to a movie, go to a sporting event, just to, and even the simple walk in the park. Now with the issues with COVID that we're experiencing, even those things requires a great deal more planning and preparation. But you have to just be more creative. But the coping skills themselves don't necessarily change. You've got to find a way to manage those experiences, manage the things that are provoking you really more creative ways, and that can include. We have much more technology available to us at this point, so people have exhausted the number of movies that they've watched. They've exhausted, the number of podcasts and things like that they become interested in. Creating different hobbies, writing, more reading, more exercise on your own. All of these things are skills that folks can use to manage and cope with not just anger, but a host of other issues that they might be experiencing.
During a pandemic or just normally, how do we teach our children to express their anger in a healthy manner?
Our children learn from us. They model oftentimes what you see. Uh, Most folks who have issues in terms of their kids uh, not being able to regulate their emotions typically are parents who don't do a good job, at least one of them, or together, regulated their emotions in terms of how they communicate with each other. Uh, and that really becomes important because what you have to do as a parent, someone raising a child, is understand the things that are provoking you. And the things that provoke us, and we all have things that provoke us without question. Uh, it could be something as simple as standing in line and at a Dunkin' Donuts, at a store to get your morning coffee or whatever the case may be, and someone cutting in front of you or not holding the door for you, or you feeling like you've been put upon in some way. Uh, well, prior to you being provoked, you are already in some sort of state. There's an acronym that's very popular in recovery circles called HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. And depending upon the condition that you're in when you are provoked, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Are you tired? Are you experiencing a host of other things? Have you just left a situation? We've had some sort of miscommunication or disagreement with a loved one. Have you just gotten some bad news? and then you are provoked by something. Well, if that's the case, you are much more likely to experience something closer to anger. And if you have an issue managing, regulating that anger, it can very easily turn into something that can be aggressive. So learning to manage that yourself, and incorporating techniques to manage that yourself, identifying those different components of it yourself, goes helps a great deal in terms of how you translate that to raising a child or teaching in a classroom, dealing with a coworker. Uh, but that's what's important. So it's not just something that you are looking at in terms of uh, making sure that other person, you're able to give that other person something that they're able to learn to manage their own, or regulate their own emotions, but how are you doing it? So I first look to the parents, the person raising the child, and see how they're managing it, and start by working there, because again, depending upon the age of the child, if you start soon enough, if you start early enough, managing your own, identifying, those areas, what provokes you, where are you prior to being provoked, and identifying, and developing strategies to manage that and respond to it in an appropriate way yourself, then more often than not, kids will model that behavior.
You talk a lot about conflict resolution. Um, does that come into play only when both people are angry, one person is angry? Can you talk about that a little bit, Gary? Because I think there's some confusion around it.
I can. Sometimes the resolution of the conflict means that one of you needs to just get away, walk away. That's the resolution to it in the moment. You think about conflict resolution, and the vision, the hope is always that two people are going to come to an agreement on something and work through it in that moment and live happily ever after. And it doesn't really work that way ever. If you have two people who are really healthy in terms of their own emotional regulation, then fantastic. I haven't often met those individuals, particularly in therapeutic circles. I certainly haven't met those individuals. So more often than not, in conflict resolution, what I look for is to help people agree to disagree and maybe come back at another time. One or both step away, as a strategy, some form of stepping away, to give yourselves time to calm down. And even in that, there have to be strategies in place, to make sure that you are going to engage in activities to calm, to soothe, to get more to a rational state in that moment when you're alone. Because oftentimes what happens is that people go away and they go to their corner and they sort of, regroup, wind up again, and prepare to come back and defend their position. So when they come back, rather than being in a state where some sort of resolution can take place, it just cycles and starts all over again. So to be able to step away, to individually, again, manage your own emotion, regulate your own emotion, is the most important thing. Uh, because two people sitting there, even if one person is still wound up and in an aggressive, in an angry state, there's not much resolution that's going to take place. So it really comes down to on a very individual level, knowing what it is you're responding to, what's provoking you, where you were prior to being provoked, and knowing some things about self in terms of those cues that indicate to you, that you are angry, that you do have, an issue in this moment. Uh, let me talk a little bit about that, since I'm there. Just in terms of, uh, really understanding yourself when it comes to anger. Most of us do not go from a very calm state to just being very angry in any given situation. There are usually a number of things that cue us, that are indicators for us that something is happening. So again, I go back to that sort of biopsychosocial thing that I was talking about a little bit earlier. Knowing yourself physically, for example, myself. Most folks go through different stages, and with each stage, you can almost measure where you are in terms of from calm to where you may even be potentially aggressive. So, do you experience sweaty palms? And if you experience sweaty palms, how close to anger are you in that moment? Some folks may experience, a twitch of a lip, or they sweat. They notice an increase in respiration or decrease in respiration, and we're all unique. So, but it's important to know those things about yourself. So to simply ask yourself a question and really sit there with it and say, when I go through this process from calm to anger, when something really bothers me physically, what do I go through? Socially, what do I go through? Do I isolate? Do I not want to be bothered with someone? Do I want to pull away from the kids a little bit? Do I not want to deal with my spouse? Um, does my stomach feel like, does my stomach rumble a little bit? Do I start feeling a little nauseous, or do I, my appetite feels a little suppressed, or do I eat more? But it's important to know those things about yourself, because those cues, unique to all of us, gives us a great way, a really good way to gauge where we are in terms of that scale of calm to maybe moving toward aggression. So that's a good thing to know about yourself.
Other techniques that are helpful when you are trying to de-escalate an episode?
The first thing is try not to get to that episode. So know yourself. In terms of de-escalating, a simple technique is something as simple as breathing. Something as simple as giving yourself a moment to calm and self-soothe in that way, in terms of taking some deep breaths, in through your nose, out through your mouth, is one way of regulating and starting to de-escalate. Another thing I like to talk about with folks is give verbal birth to what it is you're experiencing. You are angry, so verbalize that. I'm angry. But why are you angry? What is it that you're angry about? What is it that you are experiencing in this moment? So you're provoked by something. Prior to being provoked, you are in some state before you experience that provocation. But after that, you are interpreting it some way. Uh, and oftentimes there's another emotion involved in what you're interpreting. You are feeling helpless, hopeless, put upon in some way. More often than not, it's a response to fear. That's what that interpretation is. There's an interpretation that there's something fearful there. So giving, again, verbal birth to what it is you're experiencing, talking your way through it, uh, and really understanding yourself. Why are you there in that moment, experiencing that, and why are you interpreting that moment? And why does that moment have the meaning that it does to you at that time? Uh, and those things all seem like they're these drawn out processes, but as you practice them, it becomes something that's almost instantaneous. One of the things I like to do with folks that I work with in terms of anger is have them do something every day, 2 to 3 times a day, where they have to be mindful about the moment that they're in, regardless of the moment that they're in. Uh, a way for them to evaluate how they're feeling. And what that does is it gives them an opportunity to really plan, to really practice, to really rehearse, being in tune with where they are emotionally at any given time. So I'll ask them to predetermine, set a clock, set an alarm, something that just has them in any given moment say, where am I at in this moment? So, for example, on a scale of 1 to 5, one being I'm pretty calm, feeling okay, things are pretty great, nothing seems to be going on that's really bothering me, and 5, I am at what is my uh, breaking point in terms of anger. I'm really upset. I'm really emotional. Things are really bothering me. I may or may not know what the reason is, but I'm just feeling this way right now. Um, but I tell them it has to be unique to them. They're really giving those things definitions. So, when you wake up in the morning, where are you? Are you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Where are you? And I'd ask them, uh, those individuals who are willing, text it, send it to me. And I don't always, it's not so important, that I'm watching it, but it's important that they are doing it because it puts them, again, in the habit of planning, practicing, and rehearsing, just identifying and understanding where they are at any given moment of the day, being mindful about that. And I would suggest you all do it as well, just for yourself, just in general. Can't hurt. Uh, but where are you at in any given moment? And what that does is it puts you, it creates a habit in you where you are not just responding to things that are going on in the moment, but at various times throughout the day, throughout your week, uh, you do something that's very important. Be present with yourself, be present with your emotions, understand where you are with those emotions. And by understand, and what I mean by understanding where you are with those emotions is why are you there? And you could have had, and think you've had a great night's sleep, but you wake up just feeling not well. Like I'm feeling kind of upset. I feel like I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to hear anybody. I certainly don't want to go to work at this point. Why do you feel that way? And it could have been a dream that you have. It could have been, something you ate and you're not feeling so good when you wake up. Uh, but with all those things, you being in the habit of just at various times throughout your day, throughout your week, just throughout your life, saying, I'm purposefully going to be mindful in this moment and say, where am I right now? What am I experiencing right now? How am I feeling about this right now? Uh, and again, it becomes that sort of thing. As I'm talking about it, it seems like it's very drawn out and very complicated and uh, very intense, and perhaps in terms of just being involved in that. But it's really not. The more you do it, the quicker it becomes, and you'll find yourself, 12 o'clock. I'm at 2 right now. Why am I 2? Okay, and you go through that process very fast. But as you plan it, as you practice it, as you rehearse it, it just becomes a normal part of what you do.
Gary, anger management is often done in a group, correct? That is a good setting, and the social setting is helpful. Why?
Well, it's the group dynamic in and of itself is helpful because with most things, uh, we heal and get better in the company of others, in the presence of others, even if that just means one other. The one of the core pieces of wishing well, that wishing well community you mentioned, uh, we believe that as we wish well to each other, um, it puts us in a state, it puts us in a framework where we get better. And me wishing you well inherently makes me feel better. It taps into that empathic part of me, that empathic spirit in me, uh, that caring piece of me, that won't allow me to just uh, go through life and not feel as if though I do have some responsibility to the person to my left, the person to my right, the person across the room for me. But in the company of others, we tend to always do better. We heal better. There have been, as far back as you can probably imagine, just example stories, research that indicates that people get better faster. Uh, they stay and engage in healthier behaviors longer in the company of other folks, of other people. So that's the importance of doing it in a group context. You certainly benefit from having an opportunity to individually explore some things about yourself, explore some things about your situation. Uh, but the goal is that you get an opportunity. Again, you're going to hear me a lot say this: plan, practice, and rehearse. But you get an opportunity to take those things back to the company of others, uh, and plan, practice, and rehearse with them, and implement some strategies, implement some techniques, and get feedback from a group of individuals that are there sharing in that setting with you, who are wishing you well as you are wishing them well.
So, Gary, does that mean, for instance, the court system uses a lot of court order anger management? I'm assuming the court finds that it works, or they wouldn't use it as a way to resolve issues?
Yeah, one of the myths is that mandated treatment doesn't work, and research has never bore that out. It certainly does. We know from drug court research that mandated treatment does work. Uh, Domestic violence research, anger management, it does work. Folks who have to go into substance abuse treatment because of something that's court ordered, as opposed to those who are just volunteering for it. There really haven't been real significant difference in terms of those outcomes that have been observed by folks. So mandated treatment can definitely works, or works as well as treatment for individuals who are volunteering to engage in some sort of treatment. And and really, when you get right down to it, uh, and you have conversations with individuals who really engage in any level of treatment once a problem has been identified, once they have identified a problem. Uh, Even with folks who come in on a voluntary basis, when you have conversations with them, it's really not unusual to find that they're being compelled by something, because again, we're social creatures. Um, we're responding, and you will find that folks are responding because they are mandated. It may not be the court, but it may be a spouse. It may be their children. It may be, the fact that they may be about to lose a job, or not be able to get a job, or not be able to go to school. So the cost of being able to save your marriage, or to have a relationship with a child who's saying, Dad, I can't do this any longer. I can't engage. I can't be in a relationship with you if every time I want to talk to you, you're always drunk, or you're always angry, or you're always upset in some way. Uh, so while the court might not be mandating our lives in many situations, there's some sort of mandate that has you and compels you to go and engage in some level of treatment, seeking some level of cure. So that may be the reason that not much difference is being seen, because even in those situations where we would like to think that we go and we engage in things that are healthy and beneficial for us because we've had some sort of enlightenment, uh, typically it's because there is some sort of external force presence that is compelling that decision.
Gary, when we were talking about doing this session, you made a point of expressing the difference, um, domestic violence versus anger management. They're not the same thing. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, typically when we're talking about the anger management groups that we're doing, we're not talking about situations necessarily where there is an interpersonal relationship that's ongoing with a spouse, a family member, so forth. Those domestic issues are different because that process I identified in terms of the being provoked and that pre-vocational provocation stage that you're in and how you appraise it. It's different because the person typically in the anger management situations are coming in because of an isolated situation or a situation where there isn't a relationship necessarily with the people that we're talking about. There are other factors. They may have been gotten arrested because they were involved in some sort of fight while they were out drinking, or they were in a store and there was a miscommunication, or they were at a ball game and again, something happened and some sort of altercation took place. Domestic violence situations are different because typically there's a situation where there may be an ongoing relationship that has to be managed. So it is important to factor in that, as opposed to just dealing with the emotional regulation piece of it, you're dealing with the interpersonal relationship of the situation in domestic relationships. So more often than not, there's going to be a period of time where they are going to continue to be married. There's going to be a period of time where the person and the children are going to continue to communicate with each other. So we're not talking about someone driving down the road and having a road rage issue with someone where there's no relationship, but there's just been a lot of interpretation upon what that situation was, and someone got angry and they engaged in some sort of altercation on the side of the road, and they may never see each other again. In domestic situations, you've got to factor in and balance in that these familial relationships are going to continue to exist, and more often than not, people are just not going to take the position, well, I'm never going to speak to you again. I'm never going to have a relationship with you again. Never going to talk to you again. So that has to be factored in, and those pieces have to be worked out.
We're almost at the end, Gary. Do you want to take a question or two from the group?
Sure.
Does anyone have a question that they would like to ask Gary? Gary, I know you have on the website, this is just something that fascinated me, that your work is guided by your belief that each day brings in with it new opportunities of hope and redemption. I just thought that was I know that in anger management, people sometimes believe that they can't control their anger no matter what they do. But you believe that everybody can get to know themselves and manage their anger. Is that a true statement?
Not only manage their anger, a part that I guess we really didn't talk about much, but that's important, is that anger is not always the worst thing to experience. In fact, it can be very helpful. And specifically what I mean by that is anger can be motivating. Anger can protect you from danger. Anger can motivate you to do something when you see social injustices. The key, the goal is to allow it to motivate you to do things in a way that's not aggressive but very pro-social. But it can certainly be beneficial in that it can protect you from some things. It can help you move and motivate you to move in certain ways, like I said, when you are experiencing or observing that you or someone else needs to be protected. So the extremes of anger is not something you're looking for. You're certainly not looking for the person who is constantly having outbursts as a result of their anger, but you also don't want to be the person who constantly stuffs that anger away and have it really do some things to potentially do some things to you in terms of creating stressors and anxieties in your life and allowing you to be in positions where you don't have real strong boundaries and allow things to impact you in a way that aren't healthy for you. So it can be motivating. From the perspective of I think they're just redeeming. There has to be redeeming qualities out there that we look toward uh, because we all deserve the opportunity to be well.
I think that's a great place to end, Gary. And I can't thank you enough for having this discussion with us.